An NFL inter-squad scrimmage in the year 2025. What is Dan Quinn thinking? I have my thoughts. Let's talk about it. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We have a quick YouTube exclusive for you today. Just recapping and reacting to all of the reports coming out of Ashburn on today, Monday, August the 11th, 2025. Now, we've already touched on the Commanders signing 3 players, including linebacker Duke Riley, and ultimately releasing 2024 5th-round draft pick Dom Hampton. We dropped a video on that a couple of hours ago, so be sure to check that out. And before I get too deep into this video, you already know what I'm going to say. Be sure to comment, be sure to like, be sure to subscribe. On the road to 3,000 subscribers, and I can't do it without your help. So go ahead and smash that subscribe button, smash that like button. And you know I love cutting up with y'all in the comment section. So leave a comment and let me know what you think about today's video. So, recapping everything coming out of Ashburn today, you already know we have to start with our guy, Dan Quinn, and his pre-practice press conference. And in his pre-practice press conference, he started it by saying that today was going to be a jog-through session, so a rather light practice session. But he did say that the team will have a burgundy and gold game. The roster will be separated into 2 separate teams to compete against each other. So a little different than the typical training camp practice or the typical moving through the week practice through preseason and things of that nature. And I have a couple of theories. On why Dan Quinn is doing that. One theory is that, with it being week 2 of the preseason, this is normally deemed the week that if the starters are going to play substantial snaps and substantial minutes, this is going to be the week that they do that. The NFL has changed since they've moved to a 3-game preseason where a lot of the coaches around the league use game 2 as the game to get their players as acclimated as they're going to be for the season. So as we gear up for that with our matchup with the Cincinnati Bengals in a week, I think Dan Quinn is trying to get us prepared for that as much as possible. But I also have another theory. I think that Dan Quinn is still seething, and he's rather pissed from the partakings and what happened in Foxborough, Massachusetts, with the New England Patriots putting belt to our ass on Friday night, losing by 30 points. And I believe that he's doing everything in his power for that not to happen again. For that to never be the case again, as long as Dan Quinn is coaching the Washington Commanders. And I say that because this intra-squad scrimmage that we're going to be participating in, or that the team is going to be participating in, tomorrow, you see that Nikki Javala went into more details, and she said that the team is broken up into 2 teams, and that it'll include players and coaches. So I think that Dan Quinn is just trying to get the team in as many game-like scenarios as possible, because whether it be second, third, or fourth stringers, whoever was out there on that field on Friday, despite a few guys, not naming a few guys, they did not look prepared for the moment, and they looked like the lights were too bright for them on Friday night against the New England Patriots. Now, something that I was interested in and sparked my interest along the lines of the same sentence that Nikki Javala talked about with Dan Quinn, including the players and the coaches, is that Dan Quinn actually started to talk about a succession plan. He said that he was doing this with the players and the coaches because we were going to need a succession plan if guys are going to be promoted to other jobs around the league. And he almost said it as if it was a certainty. So that told me a couple of things. That told me that Dan Quinn is planning to have a hell of a season, a positive season, and that he's certain that everybody is not going to be coming back for his coaching staff, just opposite of this season where we brought back 100% of the coaching staff. He is not expecting that to be the case again. And I think that he's going to use tomorrow to get the likes of David Blau, of a Tavita Pritchard, of a Anthony Lynn, or Byron Johnson. He's going to give those guys the opportunity as they split up coaching opposing teams. He's going to give those guys the opportunity to pull out their best stuff. He's going to give them the opportunity to pull out their best stuff. Whoa, that sounded a little bit freaky. Get your mind out of the gutter. You already know what I'm talking about. He's going to give them the opportunity to pull out their most exotic plays, go straight bombs over Baghdad. I need triple option. I need RPO. And he's trying to create as many game-like scenarios to get the team to prepare for their week 1 matchup with the New York Giants, and he's trying to get his coaches prepared as well. So I'm super excited to see the reports coming out of this inter-squad scrimmage tomorrow and what exactly it's going to look like, because I said he's doing this, and my belief and my theory is that he's doing this to present as many game-like scenarios as possible. And I'm saying that because, you really don't practice kickoff coverage and special teams coverage 100% during training camp, because you don't want to injure your guys. And we know special teams, especially punt coverage and kickoff coverage, is where a lot of those injuries happen. So you don't expect guys to be going 100%. Now you want them to be competing for a roster, but you still want to practice safety at the end of the day. And when you get those controlled practice sessions, going over those going over those special team coverage units and things of that nature, you're really not going balls to the wall 100%. But in a game-like scenario and in a scrimmage-like setting like tomorrow's going to be, you better, because one thing I'll tell you is that we didn't on Friday night against New England Patriots. We was half-assing on those special team units. And this is all the reasons why I believe that Dan Quinn decided to have this game like inter-squad practice tomorrow. Just other people talking about Dan Quinn talking about the inter-squad practice, and there weren't really many reports. As we talked about in the first tweet, Dan Quinn said that it's going to be a jog through today, and I didn't necessarily see a lot of follow-up tweets. But JP Finley did touch on Laramie Tunsil, looking like he tweaked his groin yesterday, and he didn't finish practice. Dan Quinn in his press conference said he didn't seem too concerned, but he said Dan Quinn said that he was going to touch on Laramie Tunsil along with a lot of other guys that were inquiring about their injury status, like a Javonte Jean-Baptiste, like a Jordan McGee. He said he's going to touch on those guys tomorrow prior to the scrimmage, just to let people know they're going to be out there, what to look for, and things of that nature. When asked about Dan Quinn, when asked about Marcus Mariota, Dan Quinn has said that he's getting closer, but he's not there yet. Mariota is dealing with a lower leg injury and was thrown to the side yesterday, but hasn't participated with the team much in camp and didn't travel to New England. And I actually watched this press conference in real time, and some things you can't really evoke emotion through like a text message, right? And when I'm watching Dan Quinn in real time, you can see that there was a emphasized level of concern with Marcus Mariota in comparison to him talking about injuries like a guy like Jordan McGee or Javonte Jean-Baptiste. You can definitely see that there's a level of concern there, and that raised my concern, and I was ready to raise up the ante on the alarm scale as well, because there's a saying that the second most important position on the football team is the backup quarterback, because he needs to be able to keep your team afloat if the starting quarterback ever goes down. So if Marcus Mariota isn't able to do that because he's not healthy and he's not available, I'm concerned. I'm super concerned. I've gone out there on a limb and said that I believe that Marcus Mariota is the best backup quarterback in the NFL. So if he's not available, you take something that's a strength compared to the rest of the NFL. And now, while it's not a weakness, because you do have the golden boy Jaden Daniels, the depth of that room does look a lot more shallow than it did if Marcus Mariota wasn't injured. John Keim just touching on Laramie Tunsil as well. I actually saw that Laramie Tunsil did get out there and do some things like Dan Quinn said. So just to see that he's out there on his feet, moving, not laid up somewhere, is a positive sign. While I've always been curious about big guys and lower body injuries, just to see that he was able to go back in the next day. Even David Harrison talked about how the team and the PR didn't make him unavailable for questions after yesterday's practice session, just to show that they usually do that for players who are injured and things of that nature. DQ said he thought of the inter-squad scrimmage when he saw the preseason schedule had a week-plus gap and wants to look at other possible play callers on the staff, mentioned succession plans. We already talked about the succession plans. But as far as he was doing this because he saw a week-plus a week plus break in the schedule. That sounds nice. I would love to believe it. And I do tend to believe it, but you can't tell me that Friday night's performance against the New England Patriots didn't accelerate this thought process, didn't accelerate putting this plan into action. I have a hard time buying it. Dan Quinn, you got to be as PC, as politically correct as possible. But I try to live up in the mind of DQ every now and then, and I know that he was pissed with the performance from Friday. Shoot, he told us that he was pissed from the performance, so he's going to do everything in his power to correct it. Dan Quinn said there's concern about the offensive line meshing because of some of the injuries. Coleman's still out. No Cosme yet. Said it can impact the nonverbal cues that result from working together a while and having a good cohesion. Yeah, I think this is something that hasn't really been necessarily talked about enough. Outside of talent, which, supersedes all, I think that the offensive line position is reliant on chemistry the most out of any other position in the NFL, because you got to work as a unit. You got to work as a tandem to not only get your job done, but get the job done of the receivers, the backs, and the quarterbacks as well. So to hear that our guys are missing these reps, and Dan Quinn is concerned about building that camaraderie and that rapport with each other, it puts me a little bit on the edge as well, because if you know ball, you know that you need an offensive line to mesh, or they're never going to reach their fullest potential. Dan Quinn added another linebacker, Duke Riley, to the mix. We just thought it was time. We just felt like we needed another player. Dan Quinn on the release of Dom Hampton. If it's not going to fit, we'd rather give him a chance to go elsewhere. So I'm going to just give you translation for these last two tweets that I read off. Dom Hampton just wasn't cutting it. And Dan Quinn and AP are guys of the mind of rather cutting their ties now and giving a guy an opportunity to succeed elsewhere than holding on to him because you spent draft capital on him or you spent time developing him in your regime. If it's just not going to work, it's just not going to work. And that's been contrary to some of the things that we've seen in prior regimes in Washington. So it's just a breath of fresh air. Like I said, you saw it with Jahan Dotson last season, but even a guy like Dom Hampton is on the opposite end of the spectrum on that nature, because he was actually an Adam Peters draft pick. He was one of the draft picks in Adam Peters' inaugural class as the general manager of the Washington Commanders. So for them to part ways with him, he didn't want to do it. That should just tell you how much of not getting the job done Dom Hampton was out there doing. The extra long gap between, so Dan Quinn still saying that he decided to do that because the extra long gap sounds nice. Definitely sounds nice. Other than that, like I said, there weren't too many reports coming out of camp. So I think that everything, or most of the things that we're going to talk about today, had to do with what Dan Quinn was going to say at the microphone. Somebody did ask him about why they worked out 14 players yesterday, but why wasn't wide receiver one of the positions that they worked out? And Dan Quinn said he's always looking to improve, but do we like what we're seeing? He likes what he's seeing, and you do have to push it. So he's not in such a dire of mindset with the wide receiver room as the fan base is, myself included. He knows that it takes time, and it just shows me that he knows 17 gonna walk through that door at any moment now. He knows 17 gonna walk through that door, and 85 gonna hop off that trainer's table at some point. Fun moment at practice, the crowd started chanting. Jaden Daniels and Deebo Samuel got in on the act, ensuring that the QB heard all of the love. Damn, they got me. That's why I was out there wearing the Jaden Big Face today, because I love him too. Other than that, though, man, it wasn't really much to be talked about coming out of practice. Guys are gearing up for that inter-squad scrimmage, so, it's a light day. Imagine like a Friday before a football game when you was in high school. Like, it's a light day. They're walking around in shorts and T-shirts preparing for a game-like situation and game-like scenarios tomorrow. So I'm super excited to see what comes out of the scrimmage tomorrow. As you see on your screen right now, Laramie Tunsil was able to get out there and work on the field with Dan Quinn and do some things. So it just validates and verifies everything that Dan Quinn told us at the mic. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt back out there on the field after injuring his shoulder on Friday. So we're starting to get a look at some of the guys and what teams they're going to be on. So Laramie Tunsil and Austin Eckler are on, I guess, the Burgundy team, while Ja'Cory Cross-Keith-Merritt is on the white team. So I don't know. Is it starters versus backups? I mean, I know Austin Eckler isn't the starting RB1, but he is the starting scat back. He is the starting third down back. I don't know. And I ain't about to lose my hair all night trying to figure out what Dan Quinn got prepped for tomorrow's practice. I'm just gonna wait with you guys and then report on it so you guys can hear everything that came out of Ashburn tomorrow, just like you did everything that came out of Ashburn today. Thank you guys for checking in. I'll check in on y'all on the flip side. Peace.